Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are putting aside all the flowery, creative advice, about finding your muse and all that.
Yeah, forget the muse for a minute.
We're jumping straight into the engine room of publishing, really getting into the covers.
hmm
We're pushing past just the surface of writing craft to explore the high stakes, often kind of secret criteria of the book editor.
That's right. This is about going completely under the covers of how those editorial decisions actually get made.
Exactly. Thinks of editors not just as, grammar checkers.
Sort of red pin stereotype.
Right. But as the real gatekeepers, the guides, maybe even market strategists, and definitely crucial collaborators.
Absolutely. So for anyone out there who's ever polished a manuscript or maybe just thought about that whole submission process, well, this deep dive is your accelerated course in publishing reality.
Our mission today, then, is to really walk you through that editor's mindset. We're using insights from actual editorial criteria, places like Penguin, perspectives from industry veterans. I think Andrea Henry is mentioned.
Yes, Andrea Henry's insights are key here, especially on the market side. We want to give you, the listener, a kind of shortcut, a way to align your creative ambitions with the commercial realities of publishing.
You need to understand the editor's checklist if you want to move from that slush pile to a contract. It's as simple as that.
Pretty much. Okay, let's dive in.
Okay, so let's start right there with that big misconception. Many writers, especially newer ones, seem to view the editor as just a very skilled English teacher.
Right, like a mechanic for prose, fixing
Yeah.
grammar, maybe structure, tone.
Yeah. Why is that view not just limited, but actually kind of dangerous for someone hoping to get a deal with a major publisher?
Well, it's dangerous because it completely ignores the massive, almost overwhelming, really,
Yeah.
strategic and financial responsibility that an editor carries.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about making the words pretty.
Not even close. They aren't just correcting mechanical flaws, they're essentially managing a financial product, a business asset.
Right.
The sources we looked at really clarify this. The editor's job, fundamentally, is what we're calling the synthesis mandate.
The synthesis mandate, I like that. What does that mean? What are they synthesizing?
It means their core function is to bring all the different strands together. Think of the editor as the central hub, the CPU, for the whole book project.
Okay. What kind of strands are we talking about?
Well, obviously, they're working intensely with the author. That's the part people see. Structural edits, character arcs, refining the narrative.
The creative collaboration.
Yes, but that's only one strand. At the same time, they are the main liaison, the communicator, who sells the book's vision to the rest of the company.
Internally.
Internally, exactly. So that includes the production team, making sure the book can actually be printed on time, within budget. It includes the design team getting the cover right, the interior layout, making sure it signals the right genre and audience.
Crucial stuff.
And maybe most critically, they're liaising with the marketing and the sales teams. They have to convince them.
So the author might think, okay, I finished the manuscript.
Yeah.
But for the editor, their work is really just kicking into high gear at that point, selling it inside the house.
Precisely. That's a huge part of their job. The editor has to champion that book. They have to fight for it against all the other projects competing for resources, for attention, for marketing spend.
Wow.
They need to convince the sales team this book will hit its numbers. They need to persuade the marketing team they can build a campaign around it, generate buzz, and, ultimately deliver a return on investment.
So if an editor acquires your book,
Hmm.
they're basically signing up to be its internal advocate and sales manager for, what, the next year or two?
Easily. Minimum.
Yeah.
Which leads us right to that crucial takeaway for the author, the business investment implication.
Right. When you submit that manuscript, you're not just sharing your art. You're pitching a potential company asset, a product.
This is the fundamental shift in thinking that separates, frankly, professional submissions from amateur ones. You have to understand this.
It's not just a passion project anymore at that stage.
Yep. No way. A major publisher isn't just spending, like, $1,000 to print a few copies. They are investing tens, often hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Hundreds of thousands. Wow.
Yeah, think about it. Author advances, months of editorial time, printing costs for thousands of copies, warehousing, distribution, massive marketing budgets. It all adds up incredibly fast.
So when an editor is reading page one,
Yeah,
they're already running a kind of cost-benefit analysis in their head.
Absolutely. And their own professional reputation is directly on the line with every single acquisition.
That makes sense.
Every book they bring in impacts their personal P&L, their profit and loss statement within the publishing house. It's tracked.
So if they champion a few books, that bomb.
Their standing is affected. Their ability to acquire the next exciting project is hampered. They might get less budget next time, less leverage in meetings.
Okay. So they're asking some really tough, almost existential questions about the manuscript from the get-go.
Intense questions like, is this writing strong enough to survive reviewer scrutiny? Is this author someone professional? Can they meet deadlines? Are they willing to help promote the book? That's a big one now.
The author platform piece.
Definitely. And the absolute killer question, can I stand up in front of my publisher, my sales director, and confidently say this book will earn back its advance and, ideally, turn a profit?
And if the manuscript itself feels messy, unfinished, structurally weak.
It's a huge red flag. It signals that the initial investment just to get the book ready for production will be exponentially higher. It probably makes the whole project too risky to greenlight.
So the takeaway for the writer is you're not just writing for readers, you're writing for a potential team.
A team that's going to invest serious time, money, and energy, and they demand a certain level of professionalism and ultimately commercial viability right from the start. Okay, so because the editor is wearing this strategic business hat, it means the criteria they use, well, they have to shift dramatically based on the product category.
You mean the genre?
Exactly, the genre. What makes a thriller successful is totally different from what makes a literary novel work or a children's book or nonfiction. You can't just generalize about good writing.
That's such a critical point.
Yeah.
It's not just about abstract quality, it's about appropriate quality for that specific market, that specific shelf in the bookstore.
Precisely. You need to know the rules of the game for the genre you're playing in.
Okay, let's break it down then. Let's start with the biggest slice of the market. Commercial fiction. Your thrillers, romance, big mysteries, most of the books you see stacked up at the front of the store.
Right.
What are the absolute core pillars an editor is looking for when they read a commercial submission?
For commercial fiction, it really boils down to two things: kinetic energy and immediate appeal. The two non-negotiable pillars are the pitch and the pace.
Okay, the pitch first. The sources we looked at really hammer this home, the concept, the core idea. It needs to make the editor literally sit up and read. It needs instant impact.
Yeah, it absolutely has to. Think of it as the elevator pitch. It needs to sell itself almost immediately.
Why is that so crucial in commercial?
Because that editor has to turn around and pitch it internally. They need to be able to summarize the book in like 2 sentences to their sales manager.
Ah, okay.
And that sales manager, who's juggling dozens of books, needs to instantly see the hook. They need to see the audience. They need to see how they can sell it to bookstores.
So if the editor needs 3 paragraphs just to explain the plot mechanics before they even get to the central conflict.
The pitch has failed. Right there, it's dead in the water. They're looking for concepts that translate instantly into marketable taglines, into cover copy, into something snappy.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A detective solving a murder on a speeding train. That's a pitch. You get it instantly. But say, a young woman reflecting on her life and past decisions over several seasons. Well, that might be a lovely book, but it's not a commercial pitch in the same way.
Got it. Okay, so the pitch hooks them,
Hmm.
but then the pace has to keep them hooked.
Yeah.
It has to sustain that initial excitement.
Absolutely critical in commercial fiction. It relies entirely on narrative momentum. The editor is constantly evaluating the reading experience itself.
Like, literally, are they turning the pages?
Yes. They're asking themselves, does this keep me turning the pages compulsively? Am I desperate to know what happens next? Is the suspense building logically? Are the stakes continually escalating, pushing the hero into deeper trouble?
And if it drags?
Uh.
Especially in that tricky middle section.
That's a killer. If the pace sags, if the plot meanders off into subplots that don't really add anything, or, a common one, if the protagonist spends way too much time just thinking and reflecting instead of doing things, that signals a major structural failure for a commercial novel. In this space, momentum is currency. A lack of pace is a huge liability because it completely undermines the editor's ability to market the book as, unputdownable.
Oh, crystal clear for commercial.
Yeah.
But then we slide over to literary fiction, and it feels like, well, that frantic need for a relentless plot engine kind of evaporates, doesn't it? The whole calculation changes.
It really does. It's a different beast entirely. What takes precedence in the literary space isn't necessarily plot mechanics in the same way.
So what is it then?
The emphasis shifts dramatically towards artistry. The three key criteria usually become style, voice, and originality.
Okay.
Here, the quality of the writing itself, the actual text on the page, has to carry much more weight. It has to justify the publisher's investment, often in a smaller, potentially slower-selling market.
So they're looking for something more than just a good story well told.
Much more. They're actively searching for something fresh, alive, surprising, as one source put it, something that feels like it's genuinely contributing something new to the literary conversation.
It's about the density, maybe, the resonance of the language.
Yes, exactly. Resonance is a great word for it. They're looking for a unique perspective, a unique way of seeing the world delivered with undeniable artistic skill.
So it can't just be a variation on a classic theme, even if it's well written.
Generally, no. It needs to demonstrate a writer's real mastery over language, over form, over style. If the prose is just competent, clean, but lacks a truly distinctive rhythm or a signature style, it just won't stand out. Not among the thousands of other well-written literary submissions they receive. The editor needs to feel that this book must be published because of how it says what it says, not just what it says.
That demands enormous confidence and skill from the author, stylistically.
Immense. Okay, let's move to another really interesting and I'd say highly sensitive and fast-evolving space. Children's and young adult fiction, YA specifically.
Right. What are the specialized criteria editors are applying here? It feels very distinct.
It is. YA and children's publishing arguably have some of the highest standards right now for authenticity and relevance. It's intense.
How so?
Editors here are focusing intensely on voice and relatability, but always, always with the very keen awareness of the current cultural moment, the ecosystem these young readers live in.
Voice and relatability.
They want, and I'm quoting here, stories you feel invested in from the first page, and stories that fundamentally reflect the world we live in.
So it's not enough to just, like, throw in some current slang
Right.
or describe a high school hallway.
Oh, definitely not. That often backfires, actually. The voice has to sound genuinely authentic to the target age group. And that target sound, that emotional reality, shifts incredibly quickly.
Right. What sounds like a 16-year-old from 5 years ago might sound completely dated, even cringy, today.
Exactly. The editor needs to feel that the author has successfully captured the emotional turbulence, the high stakes, the psychological complexity of being a teenager right now.
And there's another layer, too, right, about representation.
A huge layer. There's an intense focus, thankfully, on diversity and representation. Editors are actively, strategically looking to ensure their lists connect with the entire spectrum of today's young readers. They want books where kids can see themselves and also see into lives different from their own.
So a manuscript, even if it's well plotted and the voice feels okay, might get passed over if it feels too homogenous.
Yes, or if it feels like it's shying away from the complexities of the modern world young people navigate, it might be viewed as a missed opportunity in a market that's actively demanding and rewarding that kind of reflective authenticity.
Okay. And finally, let's touch on nonfiction. Often, the editor is looking at a proposal first, not necessarily a full manuscript.
Correct. The proposal is key in nonfiction.
And the sources we saw noted that the very first criterion an editor often looks for is confidence. That's interesting.
Confidence is absolutely paramount in nonfiction because here, in many ways, the author is the product, or at least their authority, their expertise is the core selling point.
Okay, so how does that translate into specific demands on the proposal or the sample chapters?
It translates into two core demands, really. A bold, clearly defined idea and undeniable authorial authority.
Let's unpack those. Bold, clearly defined idea.
The editor needs to see immediately what the book is about, what its central argument or promise is, and why it's important or different. There can't be any fuzziness. And the author needs to project total command over that idea.
And the authorial authority part.
The editor has to sense right away that the writer not only has a complete deep grasp of their subject matter, but also that they have a precise, authoritative, and hopefully compelling way to deliver that information to a general reader.
So if the book is making a big argument, say about economics or history or science,
The author needs to present that argument with rigor, with evidence, maybe even scholarly depth behind the scenes, but critically, they have to frame it in a way that's immediately accessible and engaging for a trade audience, not an academic one.
right? It needs to be smart but readable.
Exactly. So if the proposal seems to waffle on the core thesis, if the author's credentials or research backing seem a bit thin for the claims being made, or if they just struggle to articulate what makes this book's contribution unique compared to others already out there.
That lack of confidence sinks it.
Immediately. It completely undermines the editor's ability to sell the project internally and eventually to readers. Nonfiction absolutely requires a confident, expert voice that guarantees the reader's trust from page one.
Okay, so let's imagine this scene. An editor has just acquired a submission. Maybe it came in from a trusted agent. They open the file. They already know the genre criteria we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
What are those immediate, almost glowing signals in those crucial opening pages, say? The first 50 pages that make that editor stop, maybe put down their coffee, and think, okay, wait a minute. This has serious potential.
Right, the signals that make them keep reading enthusiastically. I think we can boil it down to three primary things they're hoping to see. The first one is absolutely non-negotiable, and we've touched on it already, a clear, compelling hook.
It just has to grab them right away. No slow warm-ups allowed.
None. You have to remember, these editors are reading hundreds, maybe thousands of pages a week. They literally cannot afford to wait 50 pages for the central conflict or the really intriguing premise to finally show up.
A hook doesn't necessarily mean a car chase or an explosion on page one, though, right?
Not at all. It could be a really specific, unusual dilemma the character faces. It could be an incredibly arresting narrative voice. It could be an uncomfortably compelling situation they're dropped into. But something has to engage the reader immediately.
So if the opening chapter is just, leisurely scene setting or the classic character waking up and making breakfast.
Yeah, that manuscript faces enormous hurdles right out of the gate. The editor is almost certainly going to prioritize the manuscripts that grab them by the lapels, metaphorically speaking, and demand their immediate attention and investment.
Okay, hook is number one. But what's the second signal? You mentioned it speaks to the writer's command over the whole craft. Reliability.
Yes, reliability or maybe consistent voice and strong narrative structure. Confidence, for the editor, is built on consistency, meaning the editor needs to feel like they're in safe hands, that the author knows what they're doing. If the plot starts wandering aimlessly early on, if the writer seems unsure of their own world's rules, maybe in fantasy or sci-fi, or if the narrative voice shifts drastically and inexplicably from chapter to chapter,
That breaks the spell.
it completely derails the editor's faith in the project. They're actively looking for a steady hand guiding the story, a coherent plot trajectory that seems purposeful and avoids unnecessary tangents, especially early on.
So seeing that coherence in the first 50 pages gives them confidence about the next 300.
Exactly. It signals that the rest of the book probably won't require a complete ground-up structural overhaul, which is a massive time sink they want to avoid, if possible.
Makes sense. And the third signal. You said this is the one that really promises something special, maybe not just a good book, but a potential breakout book.
Yeah, this is the magic ingredient. Fresh perspective, originality. Editors, you have to understand, have read every possible iteration of almost every trope imaginable.
They've seen it all.
They really have. They know the standard arcs for time travel stories, for enemies to lovers romance, for gritty police procedurals. What they crave, what they're desperately looking for, are surprises.
How do you define surprise in this context?
It means stories that actively push beyond the expected boundaries. Or maybe they take familiar ingredients but combine them in a way the editor genuinely hasn't seen before.
So even if you're writing within a standard genre,
You need to identify and highlight the element that feels fresh, unexpected, maybe even a little weird. That spark of originality is incredibly valuable because it translates directly into marketing gold. It lets the publisher say, "You've never read a book quite like this."
okay, those are the green lights. Now let's flip it. What are the silent killers?
Hmm.
The immediate derailers, things that cause a potentially decent manuscript, maybe even one with a good concept, to just get quietly put aside.
Right, the reasons they stop reading. The biggest, most immediate, and probably most common technical derailer is simply that the manuscript is under-edited.
Meaning sloppy.
Sloppy, yeah. A visible lack of polish is a huge signal of risk. If the sample pages are riddled with obvious typos, grammatical errors, weird formatting, consistency issues with character names or timelines things, a basic read-through or critique partner should have caught.
What does that signal to the editor?
It flags the author is not quite ready for prime time. It suggests a lack of professional commitment, maybe.
Like, if they didn't care enough to fix these obvious things.
Why should I invest my time and the company's significant money fixing potentially bigger problems hidden in the next 300 pages?
Exactly. It signals, maybe unfairly sometimes, but it signals an unwillingness to do the necessary pre-collaboration work. It makes the editor anticipate a much heavier workload.
Okay, lack of polish is a big one. What's the second major derailer? You mentioned it's about market vision.
Yes, a fundamental lack of audience awareness. This is when the book just feels completely derivative, like a weak copy of something popular 5 years ago, or, maybe worse, it feels totally oblivious to where it would even sit on a bookshelf.
Can you give an example of that obliviousness? Well, if an author submits, say, a very dark, complex, explicitly adult fantasy novel, but in their query letter, they claim its closest comparison title is something like The Secret Garden.
Okay, yeah, that's a disconnect.
That's a massive disconnect. It shows the author hasn't done their basic homework. Editors are looking for strategic literacy. The writer must demonstrate that they understand the conversation their book is trying to enter, which genre conventions it's using or subverting, and who the intended reader actually is.
Right, and the final derailer,
Hmm.
you said this is the toughest one for authors to swallow, because it can feel arbitrary, but it's purely commercial.
It is. It's the ultimate market check. This is where the editor's personal taste, what they might genuinely love as a reader, slams right into the brick wall of their P&L responsibilities.
Explain that collision.
This is the painful, pragmatic reality of the business side of publishing, and we have that specific quote from industry expert Andre Henry that just captures this tension perfectly. She said she might read a submission, she might personally love it, maybe it moves her deeply, but she must pause. She has to stop and ask herself that brutal question. Is there a market for this book beyond me being excited about it?
Oof. That is a brutal question. As just a reader, hearing that is incredibly frustrating. Doesn't that kind of risk aversion actively prevent true, unexpected literary breakthroughs sometimes? How often does an editor really go to bat for a book they adore if the market analysis says no, or if it doesn't fit neatly into a current sellable category?
That's a really important question, and it gets right to the heart of the tension in the industry today. The honest answer is probably less often than they used to.
Why?
Primarily because the financial stakes just keep getting higher, the margins get tighter. An editor realistically only has a limited number of, let's call them passion project tokens, they can spend during their career times. They can really push hard for something that's artistically brilliant but commercially, well, challenging.
So if a book is maybe genre-bending or quiet or just hard to categorize, even if the writing is phenomenal.
The editor faces an uphill battle. They have to present a clear, believable, viable marketing and sales strategy to the rest of the team. They need to answer, who specifically is going to buy this book? Why will they buy it? How will we reach them?
And if they can't articulate that convincingly.
The project is almost certainly dead, regardless of its literary merit or how much that one editor loves it. In the final decision-making calculus, commercial viability nearly always trumps personal taste, because the editor's job ultimately isn't just to find great books, it's to find great books that sell.
Okay, it really sounds like the editor is implicitly or maybe explicitly demanding that the author does a significant amount of strategic homework before they even think about hitting send on that submission.
That's absolutely right. The burden of preparation has definitely shifted more onto the writer over the years.
So let's make this super practical. What are the concrete steps, the author's homework assignments, required to set yourself up for success? First one seems obvious based on what we just discussed. Market literacy.
Crucial. You absolutely must know your genre and audience. And the sources we looked at are unanimous on this. This doesn't mean you have to slavishly write to market. You shouldn't abandon your unique creative vision just to chase a trend.
Okay, good.
You absolutely must understand where your book sits on the metaphorical bookshelf. If you've written a historical romance with fantasy elements, you need to know that. You need to be able to articulate which two categories it bridges. And critically, you need to have thought about how it could potentially be marketed.
Why is that important for the author to figure out? Isn't that the publisher's job?
Eventually, yes. But showing you've thought about it demonstrates professionalism. It shows you understand the business context. It allows the editor to mentally skip that first big strategic hurdle. Where does this even fit? Knowing your comparable titles, recent, relevant comps is a huge part of this homework. It shows you read in your genre.
Okay, know your genre, know your audience, know your comps. Second homework assignment. We keep coming back to this, but it's clearly vital. The opening.
Make your first pages count. We really can't emphasize this enough. And let's get specific about what that means. Those initial chapters, they can't just introduce the main character. They need to immediately introduce the central conflict, or at least the core tension that's going to drive the main narrative forward.
So establish the stakes early.
Establish the stakes. Make the reader care what happens. Is the world building efficient and intriguing, or does it just dump a load of confusing jargon on the reader? Is the setting established quickly? And above all, does that unique narrative voice, the one that has to carry the whole story, does it shine through right from the first paragraph?
So the first 3 chapters feel like they're just throat clearing, setting things up slowly.
Yeah, describing the scenery for pages, long backstory dumps, characters just thinking about the plot. The editor is very likely going to lose patience and move on to the next manuscript in the pile. That opening is under intense scrutiny.
Got it. Okay, the third point uses a fantastic technical term that you mentioned, one that maybe not all writers know, but they should. Carriage.
Yes. Show carriage. This is such an essential concept in structural editing, and editors look for it instinctively. Carriage basically means the story must keep moving dynamically. It needs forward momentum.
How does an editor spot good carriage?
They want to see clear evidence of progression and escalation. Is the protagonist actively making choices? Do those choices have meaningful consequences that change the situation? Is the character themselves changing, learning, evolving, even subtly, page by page? Is the central tension or the emotional weight consistently increasing?
And what does a story without carriage look like?
It feels static. It often relies too heavily on long passages of internal monologue where nothing actually happens, or excessive flashbacks that halt the present action, or characters who just sit around waiting for things to happen to them rather than driving the action themselves. A story needs that forward drive, constantly escalating the conflict, making the reader desperate to know why they need to turn the next page.
And if an editor reads an opening that lacks that carriage, they immediately know the revision process is going to be painful.
Exactly. They know their revision notes are going to involve potentially massive restructuring just to inject that necessary forward motion. It signals a potential weakness in fundamental plotting ability.
Okay. And finally, the homework assignment that's maybe the most visible, the clearest signal of professionalism, even before they read word 1.
Polish. Show your Polish. Your submission, the manuscript file itself, needs to be as clean, as professional, as technically perfect as you can possibly make it. Meaning every obvious typo, grammatical error, formatting glitch, inconsistency, these should be gone. Resolve the structural issues you know are there. This signals respect for the editor's incredibly limited time, and it demonstrates that you're serious, that you're ready for a professional, collaborative partnership, not just sending off a rough draft hoping they'll fix it.
So polish isn't just about typos, it's about showing you've done the work already.
Yes. It implies you've gone through multiple drafts, you've done extensive self-editing, you've likely used beta readers or a critique group, maybe you even got a professional manuscript assessment. While the editor absolutely expects to guide further refinement, that's their job. They cannot be expected to excavate a functional, readable novel from raw, unpolished material.
All of this really speaks directly to that collaborative mindset you mentioned earlier. Publishers aren't just buying a manuscript, they're investing in an author, a partner.
That's exactly it. Editors consistently emphasize that their job goes way beyond just checking commas and fixing sentences. They are guiding huge high-level elements like plot structure, character development, pacing, thematic resonance.
So they need a partner who's receptive to that kind of deep collaboration.
Absolutely. So presenting yourself through your query letter, your synopsis, and the manuscript itself as a writer who is coachable, who is genuinely open to constructive criticism, who can handle potentially major revisions, and who is ultimately committed to working with the editor to make the book the best possible version of itself, both artistically and commercially. That is a massive advantage.
And conversely, if an author comes across as defensive, prickly about critique, unwilling to change fundamental things,
the editor will often pass, even if the writing itself has sparks of brilliance. They're anticipating a difficult, unproductive relationship, and they just don't have the time or energy for it. They need a partner, not an adversary.
Okay, this is super helpful. Let's try and crystallize this strategic overview now into really concrete actions. Imagine we could peek at the editor's secret submission wish list. What are the specific high-impact duos that an editor is secretly, desperately hoping to find when they crack open that new submission file?
Right, the things that make them breathe a sigh of relief and think, yes, This author gets it. We're focusing on clarity, immediate engagement, and demonstrable skill.
Okay, first, DO. Nail the pitch. We talked about this, but reiterate its importance on the wish list.
Yes. Do submit a pitch, usually in the query letter, that can be summarized in one killer sentence, a really concise, intriguing logline, but that still generates irresistible curiosity. That perfect blend of sharp simplicity and genuine intrigue, that's the magic equation. It signals immediate sales potential right there.
Pseudo. Establish momentum immediately.
Yes. Do make sure that beginning, those first few pages, possesses clear, undeniable forward momentum. The character's voice needs to be instantly engaging and established, and the trajectory of the main narrative, the inciting incident, the core problem, the initial tension, it absolutely must start or be clearly visible on page 1, not page 30. No slow burns in the opening.
DO. Integrate conflict early.
Right. Do make the stakes visible and quickly. The central driving conflict of the story should kick in, or at least be very clearly foreshadowed early in the narrative arc. If the reader spends the first few chapters unsure of what the characters are really fighting for or what's truly at risk, the story just leaks energy.
DO. Feature active characters. This seems crucial based on the carriage point.
Absolutely. Do ensure your characters are active agents in their own story. They need to make choices, take actions, and those choices need to drive the plot forward. Passive characters, protagonists who just react to events happening around them, are incredibly frustrating for an editor.
Why?
Because it usually means the plot lacks internal engine. It forces the editor to basically invent ways to make things happen to the character, show characters trying to control their own fate, making decisions even if they're bad ones, even when faced with overwhelming odds. That creates drama.
Okay. DO. Utilize the setting. Don't just paint a backdrop.
Exactly. Do make the setting contribute meaningfully to the story. Ask yourself, if my book is set in gritty 1970s New York, why couldn't it just as easily be set in modern-day London? If there's no good answer, your setting isn't working hard enough.
How should it contribute?
The environment, the time period, the location, the social milieu should actively shape character decisions, create specific obstacles, influence the mood and atmosphere. It shouldn't just be window dressing. Make the reader feel the place and understand why the story has to happen there.
Good one. DO. Provide proof of revision. How do you do that?
Well, sometimes you can mention it briefly and professionally in the query letter after feedback from beta readers and multiple revisions, but mostly you do let the polish of the manuscript itself speak volumes. A clean, tight submission is the evidence of a thorough revision history. It shows you went way beyond just typing the end on a first draft. It signals seriousness.
And the absolute basic DO. Adhere to submission basics.
Please, do submit a cleanly formatted manuscript. Use standard fonts and margins, doublespace, page numbers. Correct spelling and grammar are baseline expectations, and crucially, DO follow all the specific submission instructions provided by the agent or the publisher's website to the letter. Don't try to be clever and ignore them. Professionalism in the submission package itself is the very first nonverbal communication you send. Don't mess it up.
Okay, that's the wish list of DOs. Now for the warning signs. Let's flip to the immediate red flags. What are the major don'ts that might cause an otherwise promising manuscript to get immediately dismissed, regardless of maybe a cool idea or some nice sentences?
Right, the things that make an editor groan inwardly. First big one, don't submit generic characters who lack clear emotional stakes. If the protagonist feels like just a collection of common tropes, or if the reader can't quickly figure out what they want, what they fear, what they stand to lose, if you can't invest in their success or failure within those crucial first 50 pages, the book has no emotional engine, it's just plot mechanics. The editor needs to feel the stakes personally, quickly.
And related to that, the dreaded My Journey book, or the concept-driven book without heart.
Yes. Don't rely solely on a really unique high concept or just my personal journey without attaching deep, compelling, universal emotional weights to it. A fascinating premise is just the frame. The character's emotional arc, the human story, that's the painting inside the frame.
Concepts can be copied easily.
Concepts are relatively easy. True emotional resonance is incredibly hard to achieve, and that's what editors are really looking for. They need to feel the depth, the vulnerability, the universal relatability beneath the clever hook or the personal narrative.
Okay. What about writers who seem to exist in a vacuum, ignoring the genre they're supposedly writing in?
Yeah, that's a big don't. Don't completely ignore industry conventions or current trends within your chosen genre. Now, we absolutely champion originality. Pushing boundaries is great. But demonstrating total obliviousness to where your book would actually sit on the shelf, or who its likely readers are, that severely hurts its commercial chances.
So you need to know the rules before you can break them effectively.
Precisely. You must know the conversation your book is entering. You need to be able to articulate, even if just to yourself first, why your book deserves a seat at that specific genre table. If you're writing fantasy, you need to have read some recent successful fantasy. Same for romance, thriller, anything. Know the landscape.
And finally, the structural warning. The don't about the heavy lifting.
Right. Don't send something that clearly requires massive unseen surgery, as one editor put it. This is basically code for. The editor is not going to function as your developmental co-writer on a fundamental level. They won't do the heavy structural lifting that absolutely should have been done during your own drafting and revision phases.
The foundation needs to be solid.
The manuscript has to be solid, functional, mostly coherent. The core story needs to work before you submit it and expect a partnership. If an editor reads the opening chapters and immediately sees that they need to basically rewrite the entire plot outline or invent 5 new characters just for the story to make logical sense, it's an automatic pass. They don't have time for that level of foundational repair.
Okay, so the core criteria we've hammered home, the pitch, the pace, the voice, the polish, the professionalism, those feel pretty evergreen, right? They're always going to matter.
Absolutely. Those are the fundamentals.
But the marketplace itself isn't static. It's always shifting, evolving. Trends come and go. So looking at the current publishing climate, say right now, what kinds of manuscripts or what qualities of manuscripts seem to be generating particular buzz and enthusiasm among editors? What reflects the contemporary landscape?
That's a great question because things definitely do shift. Right now we're seeing a really strong and I think growing preference for voice-forward stories.
Explain what that means. Voice forward.
It means that unique, compelling, instantly recognizable authorial voice, the specific tone, style, and perspective that only this particular author can bring, is incredibly highly prized, maybe more than ever.
Why is voice so valuable right now?
Well, partly because it's the hardest thing to replicate, it's authentic, and in a very crowded digital marketplace, a strong, unique voice is one of the easiest things to market. It cuts through the noise. If your voice is distinctive and compelling enough, editors might even be willing to overlook some minor structural imperfections because they know the voice itself is a major selling point.
Interesting. Okay, what else is trending? You mentioned the strategic advantage of crossing genres earlier.
Yes, hybrid genres seem to be absolutely skyrocketing in popularity with editors.
Why is that?
Manuscripts that successfully and skillfully blend elements from 2 or more traditional genres are hitting multiple desirable criteria simultaneously. Think about a dark academia novel that also has a really strong supernatural mystery woven through it, or maybe a contemporary romance that incorporates a clever time travel twist.
What's the advantage for the publisher there?
It gives the editor and the marketing team a huge advantage. The book can potentially appeal to the established readership of 2 different genres, basically doubling the potential market size right off the bat.
Bigger audience potential.
Exactly, and it often satisfies that craving for surprise and originality we talked about earlier. It feels fresh because it's combining familiar things in an unexpected way.
Makes sense. We also touched on diverse authors and characters in the YA section, but that's broader now, right?
Absolutely essential across the board. There's a continued, and I'd say intensifying and necessary, focus on finding and championing diverse voices and stories. Editors are actively, strategically seeking stories that intentionally expand the worldview represented on their list. They know that the modern global readership demands authenticity, complexity, and a wider range of perspectives and experiences in the books they buy. It's both an ethical imperative and a commercial reality now. And closely related to all this, especially the marketing side, is the growing importance of platform awareness.
Meaning the author's own audience or reach.
Yes. Editors are increasingly favoring authors who not only write well, but who also demonstrate an understanding that the book has to live in the marketplace after it's published. They need to be partners in promotion.
So things like social media presence, a newsletter, existing community engagement.
All of the above. It's become critical because, again, the publisher's always looking for ways to de-risk their investment. An author who already has an established audience, however small, or who shows they're willing and able to build one, immediately reduces the marketing risk and burden on the publisher.
And we absolutely have to talk about the elephant in the room, or maybe the dancing teenager in the room. Book talk. The sources specifically mention this as something editors are monitoring for breakout potential. That feels like a whole new layer of evaluation.
It is. It's a fascinating and powerful new factor. Editors are, maybe not explicitly, but definitely implicitly, looking for books that feel book talk ready.
What on earth does book talk ready mean?
It generally means the book has certain qualities that lend themselves well to going viral within those short-form video communities. Things like a highly visual aesthetic, a deeply emotional core that resonates quickly, maybe a shocking twist, or a really compelling enemies to lovers dynamic, things that are highly discussable and easy to convey passionately in a 30-second video.
So they're almost pre-screening for viral potential.
In a way, yes. They're looking for books that are easy to recommend, easy to get excited about visually and emotionally online. A book that has a strong, snappy elevator pitch, a powerful emotional hook, maybe a very specific aesthetic or trope that's popular on the platform. That book is inherently more attractive now because the potential path to digital discovery and viral success seems clearer, less risky.
Wow. So if you put all these current trends together, the ideal, most exciting, modern strategic submission might look something like this.
Yeah.
It's a clever genre mashup, maybe fantasy romance. It has a strong, visual, easily pitched concept. It's driven by a unique, confident, maybe quite emotional voice. And the author has demonstrated some level of platform awareness or potential.
That submission, that hits the commercial viability jackpot for an editor right now. It ticks the originality box, it potentially doubles the audience reach, and it significantly reduces the publisher's perceived marketing risk. It's a powerful combination. #tag outro.
Well, this has been a fascinating, maybe slightly sobering deep dive into the editor's real manuscript criteria. I think it confirms one fundamental truth. The editor isn't your adversary. They're not trying to find reasons to reject you.
No, definitely not. They want to fall in love with your book. They are readers first, but they're also pragmatic business people and hopefully potential strategic collaborators.
They want stories that matter, that resonate, and crucially, they want stories that will ultimately sell and find the audience that's waiting for them, the audience that needs them.
So your best shot, your best chance at securing that coveted contract and building a successful long-term partnership comes down to really strategic clarity about your own work, acute awareness of the market you're entering, developing that unique and consistent voice, and overlaying all of that with relentless, undeniable professionalism in how you prepare and present your work.
That manuscript you finally send out, it really is your handshake with the publishing world, isn't it?
That's a great way to put it. Make that handshake firm.
Yeah.
Make it confident. Make it polished. And make it unmistakably, authentically you.
If the book itself is solid, if the pitch is compelling, if the voice is there, and if your professional effort clearly shines through in the submission, you've basically given that editor every possible reason to become your internal champion and fight to get you that contract.
Exactly. And that leads us nicely into our final provocative thought for you, our listeners, and maybe chew on. Whether you're actively writing and submitting, or perhaps you're just someone fascinated by the business of books and publishing economics. Next time you pick up a newly published book, maybe it's a huge global bestseller, maybe it's a quieter literary award winner, or even just a niche genre success story. Try not to just judge the writing on the page. Try to evaluate the contract.
Evaluate the contract. How?
Ask yourself, if I had been the acquiring editor for this book, which specific criteria that we talked about today do I think ultimately sealed this deal? Was it that absolutely irresistible high-concept pitch that clearly made the marketing team drool?
Or was it the relentless, unputdownable pace that just guaranteed reader satisfaction and word of mouth?
Or maybe it was that utterly original, maybe challenging literary voice that signaled a major, necessary artistic contribution that the publisher felt they simply had to back.
Thinking about that intersection of the art and the commerce.
Understanding how those two forces constantly interact, how the clarity of the market plan inevitably affects the creative decisions on the page.
Yeah.
It can fundamentally change how you read. And it will certainly change how you approach your own creative work if getting published is the goal.
A fantastic thought to end on. That's it for this deep dive, really getting under the covers of the editor's manuscript criteria. Thanks so much for sharing all these insider insights.
My pleasure. Hopefully it was helpful.
Incredibly helpful. We'll catch you all next time on The Deep Dive.